What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Ralph's Real Review, where today we are going over The Sword and the Stone. If you have not, make sure to like and comment and share, and most importantly, subscribe as we try to reach our 50 subscriber goal. But without further ado, let's get into the review. Pretty straightforward for The Sword and the Stone. You follow a young boy named Merlin in an era in England where they have no king, and there is a sword and a stone that is talked about in the beginning of the movie, and we don't see it again until about the last 5 minutes. But essentially, Merlin is a wizard who can kind of see the future, is kind of aware of the future, and he knows that War is going to be this great king. So he goes ahead and trains him essentially to become a better leader. And that's the movie. By the end of the movie, he pulls the sword out of the stone, and then that's it. In the animation department, I have the sword and the stone at ninth. The reality of the situation with this film is that I just don't. I'm underwhelmed by it, which is something I haven't really felt for one of these movies in a while. I liked aspects of The Lady and the Tramp a lot. I liked aspects of 101 Dalmatians. Sleeping Beauty I felt was greatly animated. So I just felt like this one kind of took a step back. I'm going to go ahead and keep it over Pinocchio just because of the fact that it did come out all these years later. So technically animated, it's I guess better than Pinocchio, but I felt very underwhelmed by it, which is why I have it at ninth. In the storytelling department, I do have The Sword and the Stone at 17th, and the reason for that is I did not particularly find this movie amusing. There were aspects of a lot of these movies that I like, even the anthology movies. But when it comes to The Sword and the Stone, there just isn't much there. I'm going to go ahead and give it the nod over Saludos Amigos, which was a commercial for South America. But outside of that, this movie to me felt very bland, very generic, not that funny, not that engaging. Yeah, I don't have many good things to say about it to try to save it, which is why it is that low. It's only over what I consider to be a commercial to South America. Having it so close to Bambi actually makes me feel bad for Bambi. I feel like Bambi at least had a message, right, to tell, and I feel like The Sword and the Stone just doesn't, right? So having it that close to Bambi, which previously was like my lowest outside of Saludos Amigos, um, yeah, I feel bad for Bambi, but that anyway. When it comes to characters, I do have the Sword and the Stone at 15th. Reason for that being is, again, there's not much here in terms of memorable characters. You have Merlin. I don't know if just looking at a picture of Merlin makes him a memorable character. I would argue that any character who is memorable from this, which would be really Merlin and Wart, who is really King Arthur, they're memorable from their stories, not from this adaptation of their stories. Merlin is fun enough. I know that he is, a figure in the Kingdom Hearts games. But the reality of it is, when it comes to this movie, they're just not outstanding characters. So down they go. When it comes to the Disney factor, I do have The Sword and the Stone at 13th in between two anthology films. You have The Three Caballeros and Fun and Fancy Free. This movie having magic makes it feel like a Disney movie. This movie being a better adaptation of a previous story doesn't exist, right? And I feel like that's part of the Disney factor is having a story that may or may not be known on its own, and Disney making the adaptation of that story. And when it comes to The Sword and the Stone, it's just not. It's just an adaptation of that story. I don't know too many because I'm not, that's just not my wheelhouse in terms of King Arthur and the Round Table and that medieval story. I know that it exists. I know that it's been told many, many times. That's just not my genre to watch. But anyway, I know without even having seen other films or adaptations that there are better adaptations of this story, right? So yeah, and then on top of that, not much in terms of the music department, not much in terms of the villain department. You have Madame Mim, who again I didn't even bring up in the character section, but you have her as a villain. D-list villain, like it's not great there. So Disney factor, that's where I have it. Yeah, this is bad. Sword in the Stone, the music goes to 19th, and I feel bad because I do believe that this is the first Disney animated film that the Sherman brothers worked on. And they are Disney legends to the max. I think I said I have it at 19th. I have it at 18th. The music is not good. It exists. I can't even remember. I think I watched this movie at this point like a week ago. I can't think of a single song from this movie. When it comes to Make My Music and Saludos Amigos, I remember there being things that I liked. When it comes to Bambi, I remember there being things that I liked. The Sword and the Stone, utterly forgettable. I have it at 18th. When it comes to box office success, The Sword and the Stone actually falls into 10th place at about $152 million adjusted for inflation. It is right behind Peter Pan. Well, not right behind Peter Pan. It's behind Peter Pan in the rankings, but Peter Pan at about 300 million more dollars. And it does rank ahead of Alice in Wonderland. It almost doubled what Alice in Wonderland made, adjusted for inflation. And there's not much story there. That's just where it lands. And then finally, we have historical significance, where I put The Sword in the Stone at 14th. I think the biggest thing for this movie in terms of historical significance is this is where the Sherman Brothers started working on Disney animated features. They worked for Disney before, but not through animated features. This was the last movie that Walt Disney was alive to see released. But when it comes to how this movie exists in the company moving forward, there's not much. You do have the Kingdom Hearts series where Merlin is a central character. And you do have, I'm trying to think, you have, what's the other one there? The Sword in the Stone. You have the Sword in the Stone at Walt Disney World, but I would argue they could have that there without this movie, right? So I can't think of a way that this movie is historically significant outside of those things. I would say that Walt being alive to see the release of this movie, I hate to say it this way, but it's kind of a bad way to send them out. And then the Sherman Brothers, it's almost forgettable. Like when I was doing research for the Jungle Book, I was like, is this the first movie that the Sherman Brothers worked on? I almost wish that they didn't work on this movie and they would have started with the Jungle Book, so it would have been instant, right? Because I'll talk about the Jungle Book and the Jungle Book review. But that music was excellent, right? This music, not so much. So historical significance, I have it at 14th, and that makes this a very, very clear cut tiers ranking. I don't have much great to say about this movie. There's not much for me to go to somebody and say, even if you are a die-hard Disney fan, right? Why am I recommending this movie to you? It doesn't have great music. It doesn't have memorable characters. It's not too historically significant. There's better adaptations of this story. There's really no reason for me to tell anybody that this is a movie that you should see for A, for B, or for C. You would have to be the diehard of all diehards to be like, I'm gonna sit through an hour and a half to get 10 minutes of Madam Mim, who is barely, a character. So I would say that this is a skippable movie. All right, but what do you guys think? Was that too hard in the Sword in the Stone? Do you fall in line with my thoughts? Go ahead and let me know down below what you think. Like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on TikTok at Ralph's Rapid Review. Follow me on Instagram at Ralph's Review. And yeah, that's it for me. Bye, guys.